Hello, friends. It's wonderful to see you today and to speak about the fascinating energies in the Schumann Resonance today. We're going to go through all of these themes of inspired energies that I want to discuss on the chart, but first, let's just go through a simple overview of what the chart changes are. I discussed these energies in the chart. In yesterday's video. That's a quick 12-minute video if you want to take a look at that to catch up with the themes that are going on there. Some of them are repeated, and I'll go over those in a few minutes. But the large wave that came in of light, oh wow, didn't this feel so good? It's been since almost August since we've gotten something quite this dramatic, and it was just so wonderful to see it. And coinciding with the full moon, coinciding with the end of the year on the Mayan calendar, coinciding with a lot of significant astrological effects. Laura Walker, on her recent commentary, said that yesterday was basically one of the most, all of what was going on astrologically, that it was sort of the most energy you'd see on a chart. I'm probably not exactly describing that correctly because that's astrology is her area, but yeah, there was significant things about yesterday and then the next few days, because we had the full moon, and now the energies continue strongly for 3 days, but I think the trends that we're seeing in the chart are going to continue and affect us for some time. Okay, so here's the key thing about the wave, just to go over the details, is that it went to 40 hertz and obviously beyond. So it's obviously higher than 40 hertz here. It's just that the way the chart is presented, it only goes to 40 hertz. The other really interesting thing is we had this big bulb of energy at the high beta brainwaves of the chart, the hertz that represent that. This is about, I think, 35 right here. Let's go over here. Yeah, so it's about 35. And that I'm going to show you a brainwave chart in a second so that you can see how the Schumann resonance is in the same hertz range as the human brainwaves. That's a very interesting point. So this incredible wave of energy spiked, and I'll show you the numbers behind it. And then we get these very, very thin, almost dangerous looking spikes of energy here. And then continuing on. So we'll see what the chart produces over the next day. Let's look behind the numbers. So you see here that the red basically has been confined to a narrow range, and then it like falls off a cliff and then rises right back up to its highs. So really dramatic. The green has been a little bit constrained, but able to move pretty well. But then it moves the whole range of the chart. And you see basically the same thing happen with all the frequencies. This is a component of the resonances. Here's the amplitude. This is the strength of the energy. And you see here the big spikes. And the key thing to note here is that yellow was at 51. And it's unusual for it to spike higher than the white amplitude when there's an incoming energy wave like this. You'll notice that the shape of the amplitude here, of the amplitude waves, it shows us to a certain extent the shape of the wave of energy that's presented here. One of the things that powered this was high qualities. I'm going to show you that in a moment. Okay, so we had, this is a normal high here in green, but it spiked up to 38 a couple days ago, but pretty active here on the green. The red was in particular this, a very, very strong spike at the beginning of this wave, and that was really interesting. And the white as well, spiking up here to its highs for the period. One of the most interesting things about this chart is that the level of the green visually. It not only was a wave of white energy, but it was a wave of green energy. And the green energy in particular continues for hours and hours and hours and hours. I relate the green energy with human beings. And so I think it'll be interesting to see what effect this has on the human population, on what we do next, what we express next, both individually in our lives and in our broader societies. Okay, that was the chart overview. And now let's talk about the inspired energy, the energy that I see in the chart. And this is going to be an intuitive interpretation as well as looking at what the movement of the numbers and lines means. But I'm going to focus on the intuitive here because it's interesting. I was up at like 3 a.m. looking at this shape, and I was also doing sort of significant energy work for myself. And it's so interesting because the energy work that I was doing, which was to recenter and strongly align with the divine within my heart, it mirrored the themes that I see in here. Because yesterday I had been presented with an extremely what I call magnetic environment. And that's where an offer is presented, okay, by lower density, lower dimensional forces. And, you could even say by the forces of darkness. In each of our lives, right, we have choices of how to behave, what step we're going to take next. And are we going to be in alignment with our values or not? Okay. And the fascinating thing about this image here, it looked like a conch shell to me. And on Twitter, I explained that the theme of this chart, in my view, is special protection. So let me show you what I was looking at. First over here, what I was seeing was a sort of a dragon type creature, but with a very long body. And that's what's at the beginning of the wave, okay? There was another one that I can barely see now, but right here, okay, at 3 a.m, it's a little easier to see this stuff. When I'm connected with the dream time. But there's another face here, but there's a dragon here, and then the wave comes. So the dragon is in front of the wave, and dragons can be, good or bad. They're definitely protectors. So it depends on what the other energies are that are going on and what that dragon represents. To me, this dragon is a protector in front of this wave. A positive influence. And I encourage you to look at the last video. There are these 3 figures here, these 2 together, a space, and then this one. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a second. But it's interesting that after these sort of shadowy figures from a lower dimensional state appeared in the chart, and by lower dimensional state, I even mean the state at which human beings are living at. The state at which we're living at. So the dragon comes in and is the protector, and then we enter this wave. Now there's 2 fascinating things about this wave. The first is that it looks a lot like the wave on December 7th, right here. Okay, do you see how this shape is almost exactly the same? And it's interesting because, and this is unusual, right? It's kind of got a knife blade shape to it. Because waves of energy don't all have this shape. Many of them have many different shapes. What was fascinating about the December 7th wave, and I talked about this on the video at that time, and actually a few times since then, is that it occurred exactly at an almost M-class solar flare, okay? Very, very high sea level solar flare. And that appeared to be an activation point for our higher brainwaves to really engage both in the high beta brainwaves and at the spiritual level, the gamma, because this part of the chart, ever since it started at midnight before the huge solar flare, it started at midnight, and do you see these lines here? Okay, these are unusual, but they have been in the chart almost every day. There's been times where we've had a day or 2 days of a break. But the activation of this part of the chart is not common. If you've been following the chart for the last few weeks, though, it looks like it's common. And I just want to show you what the next day looked like. This is December 8th, okay? So it was interesting because you also had this sort of a spike right next to it. And then look how these were lit up. It was just amazing at the time. Another little kind of slice of energy that we see in the chart today. Now, I want to show you, for some reason, I want to just show you, Now, if you're new to the Schumann Resonance, I wanted to bring up this chart to show you. I have videos I've done talking about the brain waves in the Schumann, but this gives you a pretty good overview. I added in gamma today. I didn't have that on the chart because there's so much activation. Like you can see here, this is more what a normal chart would have been like the past really year or more. Without that active, usually just kind of more solidish blue in here. So you can see that we're in an unusual time for the energies and how they are affecting us as human beings, okay? Because they're activating both the high gamma, the high beta here, okay? In this range here, okay, this part of the high beta, very high beta, almost into gamma. And then they're activating the gamma, which is 38 to 42 hertz. So I don't know exactly what that means, except to say that it looks like we are turned on. Like at every level of perception, we have full access to our perceptive abilities. The energies are really supporting that on the chart. And it's interesting because I also don't have the delta brainwaves in here, but this has also been very lit up recently. So I think that it's a sign that humanity is going through something that is really important and where we are really paying attention, okay, because we've had this at 20 hertz here, we've had this, which is the mid-beta range, we've had this lit up. Okay, for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, just a solid line. And this is theta is our sort of subconscious state. Below that, delta is like unconscious. Alpha is our waking state. In beta, we start to really engage thinking-wise. At low beta, and then mid beta, and then in high beta, we're in like critical analysis. We're drawing like mental conclusions, and then we're also integrating that with our life view, like with how we perceive the world. Okay, so there have been some massive activity in how we, the energy of how we perceive the world, and then the gamma brainwaves are our spiritual interaction. Right? Our experience of the divine, our experience of the spiritual. And from what I have studied and read, science doesn't understand how the gamma brainwaves work. Isn't that interesting? Obviously, in my view, they're from soul, okay, from our souls. But anyway, all right, let's get back to today's chart. I just wanted to review that because it's important for the energy. So here you see again, okay, this almost knife-like effect here. And now what we've added after weeks of activation at the high beta and gamma, we have added this incredible bulb at the high beta. And it's almost like we've decided something, like an incredible amount of light has been brought. And then just look at this, the human frequencies and the divine in that spectrum of brain waves. You can see here where there's a shift, right? You can see how it's different than up here. The gamma has a different feel to it here. I'm just looking at some of the stuff I see in the chart and laughing. Okay, but I'm going to skip that because I want to stay focused. But there's a lot of letters and things that you can kind of see. All right, so let me just look at my notes here for a second. Okay, so this is what I want to show you here. This shape here to me looks a lot like a conch shell here. And let me see if I can do this properly. Okay, this is from Pixabay, and I just did this really quickly because I wanted to be able to show you. But you see the wideness here, which emulates the wider aspect of the chart, okay? And then it reaches down, and conch shells often do have little bulbs along them in some of their various form. You can see the bulbs up here. And then it kind of has this wing almost that reaches out, and that reminds me of this here. Okay, so this aspect, the wing part that reaches out, it's like a conch shell. The other thing here is you see these little guys here. I'm going to make it a little smaller so you can see. What it looked like to me was a red dancing figure, and with a headdress here. The head I see at this level here. Okay, so like right here, I see eye, nose, and there, this red is part of his mouth. And here's the hips and the buttocks. And then this down here is where the legs are. So I see 1, 2, 3. It's like the figures. It's like all the same figure. It all has the same energy, but it's dancing and moving. And what this reminded me of when I looked at it was actually Quetzalcoatl. And I'm going to talk about that in a second when I go over just talking about inspired energy without looking at the chart. Here there's like a dog head on a stake, okay? And it's interesting because there's a dog associated with Quetzalcoatl. These sharp energy lines here almost look like, they look like sharps, swords, jabs, and they, to a certain extent, have the feeling of betrayal. So now there's a reversal here, which is really interesting. The white energy has a feel of celestial energy, expanded consciousness, expanded energies dimensionally. But it also highlights what the activity is on the chart, where the action is in that moment. So betrayal, you don't associate with higher light, but that is the action on the chart here, that there's aspects of betrayal. There's aspects of hidden swords that are intended to do harm, is what it feels like. Yeah. So now Quetzalcoatl. Now here's the other reversal of energy that I want to talk about, and I'm going to also reverse the chart so you can see something interesting. But Quetzalcoatl is basically the creator god, the creator version of the god of the Mexicans / Aztecs. It's just a very deep persona in terms of their spirituality and going back in time, their religion. Now, in a minute, I'm going to talk to you about the Quetzalcoatl energy. You can look it up yourself, but I had a personal experience of meeting this energy, and so I want to share that with you, because often I talk about how the red represents dark forces or the shadow aspect of our personality. And here's the reversal. The red also represents our human passion, okay? Our drive to get something done, okay? That which compels us forward from within, from the source that has no name, our divine source that compels us sort of along our soul path, that guides our steps. And so the red is heavenly as well. The red is divine. The yellow is divine. All of this energy is divine. And isn't that fascinating? There's an interesting, a complex like interplay of energies on this chart that's so beautiful. So the red around this conch shell, to me, is indicative now not of clearing the dark forces necessarily. Okay, that could be a thing that it represents, absolutely. But to me, what it shows is our human passion. And the conch shell, I've looked it up, the spiritual meaning, and then I also looked it up. It's used as a symbol in the book The Lord of the Flies, which is a big important piece of literature for our Western civilization, a more recent piece of literature. Fascinatingly, the conch shell is also a symbol of Quetzalcoatl. Now, in The Lord of the Flies, there's boys, okay? They're isolated on an island, and they have to decide how to rule themselves. One of them finds a conch shell and blows the conch shell, and that draws all the boys together. They then decide to form a democracy, okay? And they're going to have all these rules, but there's no way to enforce the rules. And what ends up happening is the person blowing the conch shell realizes the simple power of that, of being able to call the group together. And the boys' society devolves into tyranny because of the attraction of power over others. That the leaders who do not have the God force backing them, okay? So the tyrannical boys who end up, the society devolves and turns to tyranny, and is a horrible experience for those on the island. The power of that conch shell, which is a spiritual, it's powerful because it's of nature and it has spiritual power, but the boys misuse it to then enact tyranny. Okay, so if I had to say something about this, I would say that we're aware of this. Okay, we're aware of both the powerful spiritual applications of energies that are prevalent in the moment, and we are aware of the potential tyrannical misuse. And that was here earlier in the chart. We had the gates of heaven, okay? And then we had, after that, the revelation of three shadowy figures. Two of them were particularly shadowy, and this one seems to be what results from them. And I think that this third figure can go either way. Okay, you can see it's more expanded, it's more grounded. Whether this is going to be towards the positive polarity or the negative polarity, you can decide on your own, but I can see both. I can see both outcomes in this energy here. And it's interesting because on a national stage, you see this image here. It looks like a flag, doesn't it? Okay, and I'm going through this because I want to give an example that I see in the energies of chart to what I just discussed about rulership in alignment with, because that's one of the things that the conch shell represents, which is what this white wave of energy and green wave of energy look like, and red and yellow. So that's why I wanted to go back and look at this for a second. My friend Alex and I went through this yesterday. And so it looks like a flag, doesn't it? Doesn't it look a little bit like the American flag? And what's going on in this country is so important for the world right now. But this is the offer of the dark forces, okay? So you have, do you see how there's many iterations here of the flag? Okay, we want it this way, 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 we want it this way. Okay, there's many offers, okay? And then at the end, there's one final offer to the people. Okay, and now it's up to us. Do you see the power that we have backing us? Okay, the chart is lit up solidly past 40 hertz. Okay, we have the power of our divinely backed inspiration and passion to determine the outcomes here. And if we choose, rather than power over, which I'd have to say is what the shadowy figures are about, if we choose rather than power over each other, if we choose a governing of each other that's backed by divine law, the recognition of the divinity in every man and woman, that is our choice here. Human passion is strongly represented here. Now, I want to show you the reverse chart. It's interesting because there's a mirror image here, and I don't know if you see it, but I'll show you. See this here? What does that look like? It looks a lot like a smaller version of this right here. You've got the wave upward and then the smaller spike here. In fact, if I was to go like this and reverse it so that you could see, to do that, yeah, okay. Do you see how there's a similarity here? So you have a spike up, you've got a little bit of the gridding, you've got the post here, and then you've got a not very well formed bulb up here, and you have on the right side another upward push of energy, which is similar to these that occurred before the wave. So I'm just saying that it's interesting, the mirror effect here between this and this side of the energies. And what that said to me was, so you have something big and something small that's similar. So this is, again, these are our choices here. And the choices that are backed by divine will expressed through us as human beings are always the most powerful choices, okay? But this looked to me like plans for something bigger and something smaller, or plans for something to be bigger and something to be smaller, or plans to build something and then have a more childlike version of it. But it also is like two dimensions, right? You have this larger dimension and the smaller dimension. Interdimensionally, the way that physics works is, interdimensional physics is that in the more expanded dimensions, things appear bigger. In the lower dimensions, things appear smaller to our third dimensional perception. Okay? So to me, this also brought up the concept of new technologies. Of new technologies, right? Because we have an interplay of dimensions here. And in my view, new technologies, I'm making this smaller so you can see the bottom line there that says new technologies. But new technologies are going to start reaching, okay, in an expanded way into dimensional layers that as human beings, we're not used to having technology that has these capabilities. And the fact is human beings ourselves, we have access. Okay, I just read an article on, it was from, I think, a couple of years ago, that scientists have determined the human brain can access or imagine 11 dimensions. Okay, I'd have to say personally it's 12, but okay. Now the other thing that's going on here in the chart, and this is a little bit of a tougher energy, is there's a satanic element of the of energy showing here, and there's a lot of double towers here with a space between them, kind of like the hand symbol that's used to represent that energy that some humans use. And it's interesting here because you have, do you see the right side up cross in the chart? As it's presented, okay, the regular chart, that's an upside down cross, okay? I saw it here, okay, because it's as if there's fingers outward of a hand, making that, forefinger and pinky finger symbol that represents that point of view and that energy. So I wanted to point that out because this is what's being, when we're getting these offers here, do it this way, do it this way, do it this way, do it this way, at the lower hertz, okay? So in our unconscious, or in our subconscious, and even out in the world, okay, I've experienced it out in the world recently, we are being offered this deeply magnetic energy that is a return to past ways of being between human beings. And I say to that personally, I do not consent. My relationship with the divine is much more important to me. That's my choice, okay? Now, I'm expressing this from my personal opinion now, looking at the energies, but my choice is my connection with God, the Most High, the Creator, my own soul first. Okay, that comes first. That's the priority in my life above everything. And I ask for that to guide me. You know, I ask for my guides of the highest light. I ask for my angels, the highest light, my guardian angels, my higher self, Archangel Michael, the other archangels mentioned in the Bible, are Archangel Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel. Okay, I ask for guidance from the Most High, my spiritual guidance team, so that I walk the path of my soul in these environments. And I say no to, I reject and I say no to the deeply magnetic and troublesome betrayals that are being, that energy that are being offered through betrayals, through being stabbed in the back, okay, through abrupt shifts that appear negative. Okay, all these very hard energies of very pokey things that come deeply into our awareness, up in the hertz, up into our awareness. Okay, these are not in the unconscious levels now. Okay, the fact that there are dark forces that are offering us an old way to proceed. Oh, come, in a space of sacred discharge. Okay, and I'm going to imbue that with the sacred flame. So I'm not creating when I say this. Okay, I'm just telling a story. But the offer here is, oh, come around and do this again with us. Okay, this satanic element here, okay, is saying, oh, come around and do this again with us for another few thousand years. To humanity, that is the offer that I see here. Okay, we've got everything from the upside down cross to all the, the pokiness, and we can claim back. Okay, the red and yellow forces are the shadow elements of our personality, where our strength lies, that to power ourselves, okay, to power our passion that has been co-opted, okay, by these forces for thousands of years, okay? And we can claim that back and say, no, I will create now in alignment with the divinity that I am, okay? And that's the Quetzalcoatl here. You see the reversals, the red is now showing us the power, okay? And there's some people that say that Quetzalcoatl was an incarnation of Jesus Christ. Now, I'm not going to put out yes or no on that. Okay, I'm just saying that he was a very powerful, representation of the Creator God in Mesoamerica. I think I'm saying that right. In South America, Central America, for a very long time. Very long time. And with what is going on in, the United States of America, we've got this energy as a country physically, okay, at our root chakra. Texas is the root chakra of the United States. And what's under that? Mexico, okay, the home of the Aztecs, the home, and then into South America, the home of this energy, okay? It's, in a way, it's supporting us in the chart now. Okay, and I know that these charts are from Russia, but I've often seen many different cultures and cultural energies portrayed on the chart based upon what is happening, because the human collective, these are, I want to say icons. It's not icons. It's culturally, These are deeply imbued over eons of time on humanity. The stories expressed differently, okay, with different characters over time, but the energies that are represented are deeply imbued in human consciousness. And there's one more thing I wanted to say about the energies. You had here the gateposts of the gates of heaven, okay? And then you had these shadowy figures. Well, what was interesting is you see these small little energies. Now, if you've been watching for a little while, you'll remember this. Okay, these splinters in the mind. Well, what was interesting here, I didn't mention this yesterday, is that they expanded. Okay, so what you see here is like a holographic expansion of the energies. It's an illusion that these energies, these shadowy figures, are so big and so powerful. Okay, because you can see here that we're given a opportunity to measure and to see the interdimensional effects on the chart. Okay, physics doesn't have an explanation of this currently, but I have an understanding of interdimensional physics, and that is why I interpret it this way. Okay, so here's your chart. These are about, this size here is about 1/6, about 12-ish%. By my rough calculation, the size lengthwise of this, okay? So what I'm saying is that the gates of heaven, okay, relative to this figures have been boosted up 5 times larger, okay? So that if I was to compare them to the gates of heaven, they would only be this size relative to the gates of heaven representing an expanded, higher dimensional energy. Okay, so this again speaks to, when I reversed the chart and we saw the 2 images, 2 dimensions, okay? This again speaks to that concept in the last 3 days showing on the chart, okay? Different dimensions and what energy is like in different dimensions. And this is going to be important when we deal with new technologies that are coming out. And my friends, new technologies, I'm not talking about ancient crap from old alien cultures, okay, who did not have the ability to connect with the divine the way that humans do. The technology that we will create from our God source, from the soul level, okay, we're talking about higher dimensional, 5th dimensional, and plus higher 4th dimensional technologies at this point. Okay, this is totally new. Okay, human beings have the ability to create something far greater, and far vaster, and far more powerful in a way, because it'll be much higher dimensional than any ancient technologies we may have been given, okay, since the 1940s. And I'm just addressing that because it's such a topic of discussion, okay, among, the woo-woo communities, I guess, the spiritual communities and UFO communities and other communities. But, but more on that later. But what I want to say to you is that 5th dimensional technologies and higher 4th dimensional technologies, I believe, are coming. And that's what I'm seeing in the chart here. Now, the last aspect of this is the special protection of the conch shell. The conch shell is unique. Okay, and this image from Pixabay is actually, it's kind of interesting. So you see the little patterns here, and this is simply because of the way that the artist did this, that Pixabay is presenting it this way. But here's the special protection that the conch shell offers, and I'm going to link below an article from MIT. Okay, so I literally, it's taken me about 4 or 5 hours to research before, being able to create this video. But there was an article from MIT that I want to link below. And what MIT scientists have researched is the special protection that the conch shell offers. And what the conch shell offers is layers of interdimensional protection. I kid you not, it's so fascinating, these themes just repeating throughout the images on the chart. But apparently the material of a conch shell is in thin layers upon layers upon layers. And why it offers special protection is because each layer, each individual thin layer, has a different network of interwebs, of interlaced lines, okay, if how that layer was created, okay. Unlike, for example, like when you look at your fingernails, the nail has lines and ridges that clearly only go up and down for the most part. Okay, so the point being that if something came at this conch shell, okay, there would be a pressure, right, a sharp pressure, and we have those sharp lines of white on the chart. But if something came at a material, like let's say a metal that's crystalline structure was in straight lines, it could crack easily. Glass is an example of that, okay, of something that is a more fragile material. The conch shell, instead, the first layer, then the next layer, then the next layer, each one reacts differently. It's almost like the point of pressure has to go through a maze to create any cracks. Okay, and each layer is different. What ends up happening is that the material of the conch shell captures the energy of the injection point, okay, or of the impact point, and captures it in such a way that the shell doesn't crack. In fact, I have a feeling that it hardens intuitively. That's what I'm getting. So conch shells have been studied as a way of providing a new material for military use, like for helmets and all this kind of stuff. And what's interesting is that they did 3D modeling, okay, to prove the points they were trying to make about how the interlacing material worked and the dimensional layers worked in conch shells. But yet what they're finding is that they could produce like a helmet that was specific to an individual. So the individual shells have variations. And why is that? Because at an individual level, okay, now I'm going to relate this back to the energies in the chart. At an individual level, okay, each one of us has special protection, divinely sourced, okay, in all our various layers of the energy field, okay, because all the layers of our human energy across dimensions are present in our human energy field, okay? And it's specific to each one of us. Just like the conch shell, each one has a slightly different construction, but overall similar design, okay? So it's interesting because scientists took that and they looked at it, kind of what's the standard here, and then they're proposing to individualize that so that each individual soldier has individualized protection with their helmets if it was made from this material that is specific to their physiology, their specific circumstances, etc., etc. And I just thought that that was fascinating because it mirrors the divine creation that we are and how the divine protects each one of us, okay? We have special protections, and that comes from our relationship with God, our relationship with our soul, and our ability to embody the soul in the body. And now I want to talk about just simply an inspired energy topic, our special protections from the divine. So let's just talk about energy themes and the special protection that the divine offers each one of us when we choose to align with the divine that flows through us. And I wanted to talk about why I used Joan of Arc for the thumbnail for today, for the thumbnail image. And the reason why is because she's a woman, okay, who did something incredibly powerful and, from our perspective, unusual. She led the armies of an entire nation, okay? She went to the king, she convinced him to let her lead his armies, and then she won, okay? She won the battles. and is a key reason, a key factor in unifying France and protecting France. She was a woman who had a deep and close connection with God and received personal messages from the divine. And God was her protection. She had a deep connection and deep ability to allow the divine to flow through her. And it's fascinating because, this image of her has many elements of the chart. Okay, all the swords aimed at her. Okay, the betrayals that she suffered, that those swords can represent, the danger, okay, that she endured through. And she was protected, okay, by the divine. And it's interesting because in this image of her, this beautiful painting, okay, which I've sort of creatively added to the Schumann chart. It's fascinating because she's in service here to the mother. Okay, this is the divine mother. Okay, this is Mary, or maybe you see it as an angel. Okay, but when I looked at it, it had the blue of Mary, and the divine mother. And it's interesting because the divine mother is not at her heart in the painting. What's at her heart is this gold plate. And for me, the gold represents the energy of the divine. Like when I'm looking at energy in the field, there's a gold energy that feels like straight from source, and it is always incredibly protective and healing of the human being, okay? Because the soul heals the body. The divine light heals the physical form. And so the gold is protecting her, and the source of this is from the divine. And it's interesting because the image of Mary in this picture is over her third chakra. Okay, this is her fourth chakra, the heart. Okay, the fifth is at the throat, and you can see she's not a big talker. Okay, she's a doer. She's got the flag in her left hand. Okay, the feminine left side. Okay, so she's acting from that. She's got her right hand, the male side. She's got that over her heart. Okay, right above her heart, and that's where she's acting from, right? Because the male is action in the physical world. That's what those energies represent. But the woman, the mother, okay, the female, the feminine energy, the divine feminine, is over her third chakra. That is where where the will is represented, both our human will and divine will that flows through us. So Joan of Arc was one-to-one connected with divine will as she experienced it flowing through her. And this is why she achieved amazing things in the human world. This is why she could lead armies of men, okay? Because of her honor and respect for God and the Divine Mother. And she carries a sword, okay? The sword is blue. The blue, for me, in this image, represents Archangel Michael, the protector, okay? The embodiment of divine will, the archangel of spiritual and physical protection. And it's tipped in red, okay? It's tipped in red, and it's girded here in red. And red there is the combination of the human passion with divine will. But human passion, okay, it's structured. It's formed into a point here. It's formed into a latch that holds this to her. And the red, again, here connects between the mother and her heart protection. And this is human passion, the human shadow element, even our anger, okay, our strength to physically defend and protect, that has been brought into alignment in the physical world with divine will and then acted upon in this world, okay, in alignment with God's guidance for the individual, and in this case for Joan of Arc as she protects her people. Okay, as she helps unify the army, okay, And she brings them not to heal, okay, not to bow down before her, okay, but as one, okay, as equals to fight alongside her, to heal, Heal, okay, the people, to unify them through the power of the divine. Only God can do these things at this level, okay, to Heal, okay, because the human tyrannical shadow element and forces of darkness are the ones that bring people to Heal, okay. I'm sorry, I laugh at the plans of the forces of darkness. Okay, so now the next thing I just wanted to talk about was the Quetzalcoatl energy, and I wanted to highlight that here in the chart. Okay, because I see these as the dancing, warrior, the dancing creator god Quetzalcoatl. And what I wanted to say about his energy, because I had the incredible experience of, for a short time, working with someone who carried this energy physically and energetically, perfectly embodied the energy of Quetzalcoatl. It was quite amazing. And what I saw was the most fiery passion in a form that looked human. And with it, 2 dogs, okay? Quetzalcoatl had 2 dogs on a leash. And they were, it's like they were one with him. They were at his direction. They acted at his direction, but they came from the same source, the same soul source, if you will. And the incredible passion that I felt, like if you could imagine passion embodied, that is what this energy felt like to me. You can look up Quetzalcoatl yourself, but I just thought I would explain, since it was in the chart, my personal observation of this energy, and all it wanted to do is have sex with a beautiful woman. And create that way. It was pretty incredible. Of course, I was in a session, so there's none of that happening. But anyway, it was just incredible. Okay, so that's the difference between what I want to address is the difference between using these energies for magnetism and seduction. Okay, rather than the passionate, life-enhancing expression of the natural relationship between the male and female, okay, and the passionate love that can be between us, okay, as opposed to the magnetizing seduction that comes with a lower expression of that energy that can suck us in for literally eons if we allow it to. Okay. What is there to do but laugh and choose anew? So, it was occurring to me as I was creating the thumbnail, okay, and I was thinking about the energy of Joan of Arc. And it got me thinking about the energy of Jesus as well, I guess because France has so much of the Mary Magdalene energy, okay, and what she embodied, the divine feminine energy that she embodied. And it got me thinking about how following your soul path, how aligning with God can seem so unusual and even radical, right, in these times. And it got me thinking about what was it like for the apostles to follow Jesus. Could you imagine, what their family and friends said to them? Could you imagine the polarized arguments that they may have had? What are you doing? This carpenter who's on the street corner talking about God. I could just imagine what those family discussions would be like, right? And in the end, our choices are simply between us and the divine. those apostles that laid down their material life, their materially oriented life, to pick up a life of following Christ and attempting to fully embody his teachings, living a human life, okay? Imagine what that was like for them, stepping out onto this new path, and the flack that they may have gotten for it. And that is described in the Bible that they got for it. But I was just thinking about, as individuals, okay, when we make choices that we can't explain, but where we feel that this is the way that God is guiding us, and I'm going to go that way, even though I can't really explain it very well to my friends or family, except for now I'm at the point where I just say, this is my intuition. I always go with how I feel guided by the divine through me, by my soul's promptings. And I'm at the point where I finally feel comfortable saying that. But it's an exciting path to follow. And I believe it leads us to exciting new things that we're going to create on this earth through that passionate energy. And as you go through the storms of the current time, whether they're on a personal level or whether you're looking at your national scene and saying, oh my God, what is happening? What is happening in these times? And you may be having a strong reaction to, whether you agree to what's happening or not, most likely. And what I have to say is that I wanted to tell this simple story. I was driving in the car one day, and this was a few years ago when I was still working in corporate. And I was driving a very nice car, and it was a convertible, and it was super fun. It was such a pretty car. I don't own it anymore. And I had gotten it because I worked in corporate, and I drove an old clunker. Okay. And I happened to run into one of the salesmen late at night in the car park. And when my car was driven up by the valet, and he was a beautiful Irish man, and I'm saying beautiful because his voice just was, I just adored his voice. But anyway, he said, Susan, what are you doing? Is this your car? It can't be. He said, you represent the company. You need to buy a better car. Oh, it was so funny. So I followed his advice. And the thing is that I wasn't used to allowing myself to express my passion. Okay, allowing myself to bring that into the material and the enjoyment of these things. And I thought, I am going to follow that advice. I love that advice. And I got a beautiful convertible, okay? And I drove that beautiful convertible, and it was so fun. It was such a fun car. And we've got to allow ourselves to listen to the voice within us that guides us along the path, and that sometimes is confirmed by that which is outside of us and the human beings that we know. But I was driving this car, and there was a young girl crying at the side of the road, okay, in the town that I lived in, and she was also hitching a ride. And I thought, I am going to pick this girl up. I better pick this girl up before someone else does, is what I was really thinking. And so I picked her up, and she was your average teenager who had massive dramatic fights with apparently her parents, and was incredibly upset and unhappy with her life. And I was driving, and I said to her, look, honey, okay, I have been there. Okay, exactly where you are. And I didn't tell her this, but I spent years crying. And I can admit that to you now because a friend of mine has admitted to me, okay, these things about herself. that she spent years crying, and she spent a lot more years crying than I did because she had her awakening decades before me. My friend Andrea, who I've sometimes linked her blog. I'll link it down below so you can check out her incredible work. But I said to this high school girl, I said, look, I've been there. I've spent years, okay, walking through that heavy path. And I said, but I came out of it, okay? I followed my inner guidance. I followed that path. I took the steps in the real world, and look where I am now. I'm at the point where I'm happy laughing with you, and I'm driving this super cute car. And I said to her, keep your dreams alive in your heart. Keep that spark alive of who you are, because you can make it through too. You can do this, okay? You can do this. You can get to this point also. And if you're struggling today in these energies, which are very intense, that's what I have to say to you. You know, take those who have came before us and those who have walked the path, and, you know, they're human examples for us. Joan of Arc, Jesus, Quetzalcoatl. You know, I don't mind combining an eclectic mix because, in my view, all of this is of the Creator. And I am a Christian. I do, you know, follow the teachings of Jesus. But this is all of the Creator, and the message is the same. Follow your heart and that passion that derives from the divine within, from God inside us, from the light of the soul.